Right. To the lesson. So in today's discussion, I'm going to focus on the control structures where we can make decisions based on our requirements. Now, if you look at what we have done so far, at least for the two programs that we have developed, we have executed everything from top to bottom, right? So we have executed all the statements, all the Python statement. But now we are going to look at, depending on our requirements, how do we discuss. So this is to control how the execution happens. We call control structures. But before we look at control structures, we need to understand another data type, which we have not discussed last time. So this is called Boolean. So Boolean data type, which is available with Python. So if you start looking at what Boolean is, Boolean has two values. You have two values in Boolean. So the first one is you have true and false values. We have true and we have false. Make a notice here. So in true and false, you have T and F capital. Make note of this. So this is how the Python stores Boolean values. Why I said that? Because if you use like simple, Python will not recognize this. So this is one of the mistakes you might do as a beginner. So for example, if you use a type function, remember we use a type function. If you use properly, it will say it's a class bool. At the same time, if you mistakenly use true all in simple cases, then you will get an error, right? So that's a need to be recorded. Next one, we call Boolean expressions. Now, from this point onwards, we are going to look at make some decisions. So when we make some decisions, we have to, we need something called Boolean expressions. We have to evaluate different things. For example, we want to see whether the two values are the same, right? So you will get to know this, why you need this. But let me explain the three example given here. So in the three example given in here, simply we are going to check whether the left-hand side is equal to right-hand side. So remember and notice that we have two equal signs. Simply we are checking whether your left-hand side is your right-hand side. And for the first example, it's true, and we get the outcome as a true value. And as a second one, if you ask Python interpreter whether 5 is equal to 6, and this is what you will get. And then you can have some complex statement as well. Look at string concatenation, which we have discussed, where you have two string values and plus, which is considered as concatenation. And we are checking whether that is equal to right-hand side. So we have two parts, L plus low. We know that this will get hello. So therefore, if you say L plus low, if you ask a Python interpreter whether it's equal to hello, and we end up getting true. So which means that you now understand knowing these Boolean expressions, Boolean operators. So let's look at mainly comparison operators we have. So when we are want to compare the two sides, these are the operators that you need to use. Make a note of this. So less than, greater than, common, then less than or equal to, greater than, equal to, common. You have to note how we represent equal to. You have seen like two equal signs, and then not equal to exclamation. So for example, in our the second example, we will check whether 5 is equal to 6. And if you say, okay, you can check whether 5 is not equal to 6, and Python will say it's true. Right. Next. Now, when you have like Boolean expressions like this, you can combine them using what we call the logical operators. Because you have to, if you have like more than one thing to compare, you can use logical operators. Now, for example, if you look at the AND operator, usually how AND works, if both statements are true, then the final outcome will be true. So you can check on this. For example, in simply, we can try with, for example, false and false. We can directly work with the Boolean values, and it says false. And then we can say false and true. It says again false, and then we can switch the values true and false. It says false, and make a note of that. If both are true, and it says true. So whenever you want to evaluate an expression where you want to check whether both the expressions are true, then use AND operator. Let me give an example. If you want to check whether the value is between 0 and 10, right? Which means within this period. So I can check, like, let me say X. I'm going to first put some value. Let's say X equals 5. So this is assignment. And you check whether X is greater than 0. It says true. And then I will check whether X is less than 10. It's true. So if I combine this, simply in one statement, I can check. I'm checking both conditions. Like I'm checking whether X is greater than 0 and X is less than 10. So if you want to make it a range, you can use expressions like this. And in our case, it will say true. Similar to that, we can use O operator. So how O operator works is if one of the statements true, then it will be true. So if I do the same thing with O operator like in earlier, so if I use false and false, it says false, but whenever you have at least one, then it becomes true, right? So here also true or false, we can say the same, and true or true. So what you need to know is about the operator is if one of the expressions evaluated true, then the whole expression becomes true value. Okay. So having said that, let me explain the example. So we have a n here. So let me say n is let's say 4, right? So what is this operator? I hope you remember. What is this operator? It's the mod operator, right? So mod operator means that you divide n by 2 and look for the remainder, and we know it's 0. So if you put an expression like this, I'm going to check. You divide the number by 2 and you check whether the remainder is 0. Simply, we are checking whether the number is divisible by 2 and the answer is true. What about the next one? If you put this, can you tell me the answer in the chat? What if I put this expression? What is the outcome of this? Okay, if I go from the beginning, n is 4, then mod is the remainder. So basically what we are trying to see is we divide the number 4 by 3. And what is the remainder? Remainder is 1. Okay. So now we are checking whether 1 is equal to 0. And it says false, right? It says false. right? What about NE6? I will put NE6. What about the first one? If I put this, is it true or false? The 6 is divisible by 2. Is it divisible by 3? Yes, it is, right? So now let's combine. So I'm going to start with n is 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine the two expressions. I'm going to check whether n is divisible by 2 or then n is divisible by 3. What is the output of this then? Yes, Samadhi, what do you think? Is it true or is it false? Yeah, we have O operator in between. We have first part. We are checking whether it's divisible by 2. It's true. Then the second part, we are checking whether the number is divisible by 3. It's false. So true or false. One of the value is true. Yes, therefore, this should be true. What about this? I'll put 5. And what about the outcome of this? First part, you try to divide by 2 and see whether it's divisible by 2. No, 5 is not divisible by 2. Second part, you check whether the number is divisible by 3. Again, no. We have false or false. So the final answer should be false. Okay, so I hope now you are comfortable with the second operator, comparison operator. Right, last one, the not operator. So not operator is the opposite value. So which means you can check simply, you can say, okay, what is not true? It says false. Then not false, it's true, opposite values. So if you have a x and y, let's say x is 20 and y is 10, yes. And if you say not, x greater than, sorry, x greater than y, what do you think or what do you expect from this operator? So first look at what is inside the bracket. We are checking whether x is greater than y. X is 20, y is 10. Then x is of course greater than y. Then it's true. Then not true is exactly as Parag said, Samadhi said, they should be false. So I hope now you should be able to comfortably work with logical operators. So we discuss now Boolean types. We discuss now the comparison operators. We have discussed now the logical operators. Right, next one. Now, let's move on to control structures in Python. So as I discussed earlier, so far we execute all the Python statement in a program. So usually we use the term sequential. So far the programs that we have written, it just sequentially executed. It execute all the Python statement. But then you can use to branch. Branching or selection means based on a particular decision, you can do different things. For example, it's like logic in day-to-day life. If it is raining, you take out an umbrella. Yes, simple as that. And then you can have loops or repetitions. So that means you can repeat something. So these are the things that we are going to discuss in this part. So if I start with the selection statement, if so we have selection, we are going to use if. For repetitions or loops, we are going to discuss two things: for loops and while loop. So all these are known as control flow structures. Right. So let's look at the if statements. And if is used, as I discussed already, for making decisions. So in Python, there are about a couple of statements we use. We use if, else, elif, and even these three statements can be used in various ways to write complex selection statements. Let me start with a very simple example, right? In this particular example, what we are going to see is, right, we are going to write, we are going to get a number from the user. This is a flow chart that I have given to you just to try to understand the flow of operation. And you can see after you get a number, you check whether its number is negative. If it is number is negative, then you are performing something here. You will notice in your right hand side. If the number is negative, you multiply by -1. So for example, if the user enter -5, right? If let's say user enters -5, right? And then you check whether -5, is it less than 0? Yes, true. So you go in direction. So now you will get -5. You multiply with -1. So what happens? You will get +5. And then you'll print the numbers. So it will output 5. Right? So this is what will happen if the number -5 is used. Similarly, if you use, for example, let's say user input +5. So we are checking whether 5 is less than 0. No, then it's false. Nothing will happen. It will print 5. So you will notice how the decision came out from this. So now you will see what happens in this simple flowchart is it'll provide you the what we call the absolute value of a number. So irrespective of whatever the number you give, it'll give you absolute value, only the size of the number or value of the number without its positive or negative. Right. Now, I hope you understood how it works. Now, can you tell me, right, the implementation part? So, what is the first statement, or what is the first Python statement if you are to ask to write this program? Parakram? Exactly. We have to get the number from the user. So can you give me exactly how you get that number? Okay, first of all, why don't you try to give me the answer for this one? Yes. Um, Spend some time. So if you look at right in this program in Python, we can see there are three parts. We have to get the number. And then if based on the number, you are going to decide whether you are going to multiply by -1 or not. And finally, output the number. So you know input and output now. So I will explain only this part. So in this part in Python, we can say if and then the condition. Assuming that I'm using variable number, we can check whether the number is less than 0. We have a colon, enter. You can take some spaces here. I will explain what this means. And within that, we will say number equals number into -1. So in my case, I'm going to get a new window, right? And then let's write down the program. What I have asked you to do is implement this. So we know that first of all, we have to get the number from the user. So let me use number equals int input, enter a number, whatever the message, right? So this is the first line. Then we discuss the selection. If we know number is less than 0, we want to make it positive by multiplying by -1. Last one, print simply the number, right? That's all. So let me save this. So let me put this as program number 4. Yes. Let me run this. Run module. Okay, it asked me to enter the number. I'll put -5. And it says 5 because when you enter -5, what happens? You check whether it's -5 less than 0. Yes, -5 to -1. Then it becomes 5 and then in print 5. So let's repeat. If you put 5, what will happen then? Simply 5 because it won't go inside, right? Then it will give back the same answer. Okay, right. So one thing I want to discuss here, that use of spaces, irrespective of the programming languages. If you look at the other programming languages, for example, if you take C, we use brackets to maintain the blocks. But in Python, what it uses is the indentation. That means the space that we will actually keep in front of this. This indicates that this particular statement is inside if statement, right? So that means whatever comes in with the same alignment in the same indentation will indicate that this block of statements are inside the statement. And if you take this print statement, it's outside, right? Because it's aligned with these three statements. So this is the indentation is you have to use proper indentation if you use Python programs. So going back to indentation, this is what we use to group the statements. And if you want to go something in together, then use the same indentation, right? This is called a block. And then usually we will use 4 spaces, but in some cases, even the 2 spaces are used. But what is important is if you make a mistake in this indentation, you get errors. So let me explain. Now, for example, in my previous example, we had some spaces here. Let me remove this. And if I try to run this particular program, you will notice that an error message. It says expected and intended block, which means that there's something wrong with your indentation, right? So if you get a similar error when you write programs, make sure that you check your indentation, whether you have done it correctly. So in my case, there's a problem with this. So let me correct this by putting the spaces and make it as an indented block. Now, if I run this, okay, this time it'll work, right? So make sure that when you write programs, especially when you use control structures, we want to put blocks inside. So you have to use correct indentation. Right, okay. We have another example, right? So the second example you can notice now, since we have already done one example, it'll be more easier than to compare the previous one. So in this example, what you have to do is you get marks, or let's say for a subject. And if it is greater than or equal to 50, then you will say pass. Otherwise, you will say fail, right? So if the marks is greater than or equal to 50, you will say pass. Otherwise, you will say fail. So simple as that. Right. So in this particular case, compared to the previous example, what you notice in the previous example, we had 1. So that's why we had only if. If you look at our code, right, we had only if. That means if this is true, this is what you are going to do. So here we have 2 parts. If it is true, this is what you are going to do. If it is false, this is what you are going to do. Which means in this part, we have to say else part. This is what we call else. Remember, we had 3 statements we are going to discuss: if, else, and elif. So here, the fourth part, use else. Okay. Right. So let me give you my answer for this one. So as you have already seen in the flow chart, the first thing is we have to get the marks. One thing to remember about getting marks is you have to convert it to either integer or floating point as a number format. So I have used int here, but you could even use float here. And then the next thing is we use if the selection. If the marks is greater than or equal to 50, we say pass. And this is what is new for us, else with colon, then print fail. So for example, if user enters 85, let's say marks is 85, you check whether 85 is greater than 50, yes, then it print pass. Let's say user enters 20. So if this is 20, you check whether 20 is greater than 50, no. Then it will come to the else part and it says fail. If uses a 50, you are checking whether 50 is greater than or equal to 50. Yes, it says for pass.
Ochi, ane enna ko?
Right. So that's about um, a selection with both if and else. So let's move to the next one. Okay, now a little bit more complex one. Same structure we have to use here as well. So we have two selections. So if you look at this example, we get um, temperature of water. So depending on the temperature, we are going to output different states, right? So in this example, you will see if the temperature is less than 0, it's a state of ice. If it is between 0 to 100, then it's water, or else it's steam. Okay, again, like what we did, shall we try yourself first and then let's discuss the answer. Right. What I'm going to do right now is let's look at how we can do this, right? Um, so I'm going to get close this one. I'm going to get a new file. And in this particular case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use temperature. So let me put this as temperature. And then based on the input, we are going to display whether the status is ice, water, or steam, right? So the first thing is you have to get temperature. So I will use variable temperature. Maybe we'll say temp, right? And we have to use int and input. Okay, right. So we are going to get the temperature values. And now the second one is, it depends on how you check the values. In my case, I first checked whether it's less than 0. And you could have done it the other way around. You could, check whether the temperature is greater than 100. So this is all possible. So you have not one unique answer for the question like this. So in my case, I will check whether the temperature is less than 0. If it is true, then I will say print ice. So this part you already know. So if this is my program, if I run this, I have to save first. Let me go to courses. So my program number 5. Right. Okay. So let me run. Okay. Let me put -5. It says ice. Good. So if that is not the case, then we know it should be the else part. And if it is else means it could be water or steam, right? So I will put it in this form because right now we don't know. So for example, if I put 25, it says water or steam. So we don't know what it is because you need have another selection here, right? So according to my um, uh, flowchart diagram, the second thing we are going to look at is whether the temperature is less than or equal to 100. So if I follow the same structure, the next thing that I should check here is I'm going to check whether the temperature is less than or equal to 100. If this is the case, we'll say, okay, then it should be water, right? Because if you come to this point, it means temperature is not less than zero, which means zero or more. But if you come down to here, it's less than or equal to 100. So which means it's between 0 and 100. But if you have else here, what it means? Temperature is not less than 0 and temperature is not less than or equal to 100, which means obviously it's more than 100. So therefore, it should be steam. Right. Now let me run. We'll check couple of values. So let's put -5. Yes, it says ice. Working perfectly. Then let me put 25. Yes, it's water. Let me run one more time. Maybe I will put something more than 105, something like 105, more than 100. So it says T. So hope you got this. So what we have seen is how we can use what we call nested selections in this particular example. You see if inside another, if in this particular case, under the else part, right? So when you have situations like this, you will see it happens, and the code will be more complex. So there's a solution. So let me explain that. Okay, so let me save this first. So I'm going to save this as program number 6, right? And then I'm going to put this as a leaf. So when you have a leaf statement, it means else and if. So what you could do is you don't have to go inside. You can space, you can make it compact as well. So I'm going to adjust in this so that now it aligns. So you can see you can have any number of elif statements in a problem like this, right? So that make looks the code clean and more compact, right? And it'll serve the same purpose. So if I run the same program again with the same set of examples, right? So -5 means ice, and then 25, that is water, and then yes, 105, that is steam, right? So you can make a note of this. Use of elif statements will make your code looks more compact with the same purpose when you have especially nested if statements. So the first thing that we are going to discuss under the loops, we will talk about while statement, right? In while, we use to repeat something. Now let's look at this simple example where we want to print numbers from 1 to 10. Now, printing numbers from 1 to 10, you can do it directly. You can say print 1, print 2, print 3, print 4, print 10 as 10 statements. But there's no point on, uh, have 10 print statements. So the idea is while loop is we will have a single print statement and we are going to repeat it for 10 times. So that's the idea. So to do that, the trick that we are going to use is we define a variable. So we say print number. The number is a variable. So initially we set the number to number 1. And then you print the number. So you will get number 1. And then within the loop, we change the number to 2. So if you look at this particular statement, number equals number plus 1, what happens? It increase number by 1. So what happens? Number becomes 2. So it's print number 1, print number 2, number 3, and so on. So this will continue. And then in this particular case, if you want to limit to number 10, so we have to put up a condition. And then if it is reaches 10, it will print 10. And then next iteration, it leaves the loop. Right. So let me explain again with code. So let me open up a simple file for that. In this particular case, I'm going to talk about how we can print this. So as I told you earlier, so this could be a simple print statement and we can have a number. So variable, I say number 1, and then let's print the number. So this is what we are going to do. So let me save this. So this is program number 7. Right. So if I run this, you will notice that this will print just number 1, right? And the idea of this is we want to repeat this multiple times. And by repeating, we want to increase the number by 1. So what we are going to do is we will say, okay, print number. And as soon as you say print number, you increase the number by 1 like this. So if you print again, so you will notice what will happen. So you say number 1, you print 1, 1 plus 1, number becomes 2. Second time, number is 2, right? And you will get 1 and 2. Same thing you are going to repeat, right? So same thing you are going to repeat. So let me put one more time, right? So you will get 1, 2, 3. So simply we want to repeat the 2 statements. So to repeat, as I told you, we have to use while loop. And you need a condition. So let me just put true, right? And I'm going to put inside this. Can somebody guess and tell me what is the output of this program? Yes. Now you can see we start saying the number 1 and then we print the number, we increase the number by 1. But please note, we have our condition is always true. So what happens now? Yes. Sachit, what happens? Okay, let me share the screen. Sorry about that lights. Yes. So hope you can see now. So what I did early is, so let me go from the beginning what I did early. So I started like this, right? So number 1 and print number, we get number 1, right? Then If you say number is number plus 1, if you say print number again, right? So if you do this, simply what you are doing is we are trying to repeat the same steps, and you see now we are getting number 1 and number 2, right? Similarly, if you do that again, right? And if you run, you will get 1, 2, 3. So simply what we did it here is we repeated these two statements. So what my next statement is, what if I put while true, and if we put these two lines inside. So the question for you is, what is the outcome of this program? The condition is always true, and we have two statements. We print the number and we increase the number by 1. Yes, Sajid? So first it print 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. What happens? It's infinite, right? Exactly. So if I run this, you will notice that, right? This will keep on running. So it's an infinite loop. So we can say control C, which will break this, right? Okay. So the next one is, how do you stop at 10? So we want to print up to 10. So idea is, the condition we should put it here, we need to do something with 10, right? So that means one side we have number. The other side we have 10. So we want to check whether this number is less than equal. Why I put equal? Because we want to print 10, right? So this is the condition. So if that is the case, if I run it again, now you notice that this will print numbers from 1 to 10. Okay, so this is interesting. So in while loop, usually we have 3 places you have to be very careful of. You have to look for the starting point. That means the initial assignment. In our case, number 1. Then increment or decrement within the loop. So in this case, we increase the number by 1. Finally, stopping criteria, that is condition. So these are the 3 places you have to look when you are writing a while loop. Okay, having said that, simple question for you now. If I want to print numbers from 1 to 100, what should I do to this code? Which place I should make the change? Yes, exactly. So if I put this condition, the third place, so I told you this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. If you change the value of this place, 10 to 100. So now this will print numbers from 1 to 100. Yes, agree? Okay. Another question. So if I want to print only the odd numbers, what should I do to this code? Let's say I want to print only odd numbers from 1 to 100. What do you mean by odd numbers? So initially we want to print 1, then we want to print 3, then we want to print 5, and so on. So if you focus on the three places, tell me which place I should make the update. Exactly. Yes. Right now we are increasing just by 1. So what if I put 2? So let me change this to 2. So I'm going to put 2. Now what will happen? First it will print 1. Increment is 2. So 1 plus 2 is 3. Then 3 plus 2 is 5. Isn't it? Okay. It goes from 1 to 99, right? Without changing anything else. Just by changing the increment, we made the change. One last question. If I want to print only even numbers starting from between 1 to 100, I will repeat, if I want to print even numbers from 1 to 100, which place in this code we should change? So what should happen? Between 1 and 100, the first value should be 2, right? Then 4, then 6. It goes on like this. Yes. Given this code, we'll print only odd numbers from 1 to 100. Tell me to print even numbers, what we should do to this code. Parakram? Yes, we have to set the initial value, isn't it? What is the initial value? So right now we start with 1. So that's why we have 1, 3. So when you change this to 2, okay, we'll run. And this is what we are getting. 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, 14, 18, 20, and so on. Agreed, right? Yes. Okay. So I think now you are comfortable with a while loop, right? So this is the questions that we have discussed. I think we discussed the answers of the first one. Rest, even numbers, odd numbers. Okay. Small exercise for you. Can you write the code for this?